The illusion of wealth, how inflation quietly rewrites the value of money. 1. The vanishing dollar. Every day, you lose money without spending a cent. Not because you misplaced it, but because someone quietly made it worth less. Prices rise, paychecks lag, and every dollar buys less than before. Inflation, we're told, is natural, like the weather. But it's not. It's engineered policy, designed to erode value over time. So what does that actually mean? It means the system depends on your dollar losing power just slowly enough that you don't notice. Footnote. Inflation is not random, it's a deliberate economic mechanism that reduces the purchasing power of currency over time. 2. The origin of the system. This design began in 1913, when the Federal Reserve was created. The promise was stability. The result was perpetual debt. Every dollar that exists was borrowed into existence. Money isn't printed, it's loaned. For the system to survive, debt must grow endlessly. And for that debt to remain manageable, inflation must never stop. Governments quietly cheer inflation because it lets them repay what they owe in cheaper dollars. Footnote. Inflation functions as a hidden debt management tool, reducing the real value of government and corporate liabilities. 3. The 2% lie. Central banks say 2% annual inflation is healthy. It sounds harmless, until you realize that means your money loses half its value every 35 years. $10,000 today will buy what $5,000 does when you retire. That's not stability. It's a slow-motion wealth drain. Meanwhile, you're taxed on the tiny interest your savings earn but not on the value your dollars lose. The game rewards borrowers, punishes savers, and keeps everyone chasing returns just to stand still. Footnote. Modest inflation targets disguise long-term losses in purchasing power, encouraging spending over saving. 4. The Cantillon effect. When new money enters the economy, it doesn't land in your wallet. It flows first to governments and financial institutions. They buy assets before prices rise. By the time that money filters down to workers, it's already worth less. This is called the Cantillon effect, and it's as old as money itself. Inflation doesn't hit everyone equally, it enriches those nearest to the printing press and impoverishes those furthest away. Footnote. Early recipients of new money gain purchasing power while late recipients suffer from devalued currency. 5. The broken mirror. We measure prosperity with numbers that inflate along with prices. GDP rises, wages rise, house prices soar, and we feel richer. But if everything is measured in shrinking dollars, growth becomes an illusion. Governments boast of expansion, while the average citizen's purchasing power falls. Inflation disguises stagnation as success. Footnote. Inflation inflates economic indicators, making stagnation appear as growth. 6. The addiction to debt. Inflation keeps the global economy hooked on borrowing. Without it, debts would become unbearable, defaults would surge, and the illusion of prosperity would collapse. Central banks fear deflation not because it's bad for consumers, but because it's fatal to debt. A world without inflation would demand real productivity, honest accounting, and limits on government spending. None of those are politically convenient. Footnote. Deflation threatens the debt-based system by increasing real debt burdens and exposing fiscal irresponsibility. 7. The modern empire of money. Since 1971, when the U.S. dollar was severed from gold, money has been unanchored, pure trust, no backing. Governments learned they could print endlessly, central banks learned they could steer economies by doing so. Inflation became the language of empire. Britain used credit, America uses the dollar. Every empire that debased its currency eventually fell. Rome mixed its coins with base metals. We mix ours with promises. Footnote. Fiat currency systems rely entirely on public trust, which erodes as inflation undermines value. 8. The quiet theft. Inflation doesn't steal all at once, it nibbles at savings, paychecks, and pensions until value evaporates. The victims rarely notice, and the thieves wear suits. It's the most elegant heist in history, no fingerprints, just policy. Every rescue package, every stimulus check, every temporary measure dilutes the money already in your account. Inflation is taxation without legislation, legalized, invisible, and relentless. Footnote. Inflation acts as a covert tax that transfers wealth from savers to borrowers through currency debasement. 9. The collapse of trust. Every inflationary cycle ends the same way, not in arithmetic, but in psychology. When people lose faith that money will hold value, they abandon it. That's when inflation turns to hyperinflation. Bread lines in Rome, wheelbarrows in Weimar, zeros in Zimbabwe. It's always trust that breaks first. Inflation begins as arithmetic, it ends as revolution. Footnote. Monetary collapse occurs when inflation erodes public confidence in currency stability. 10. The escape plan. But knowledge is armor. Once you see inflation for what it is, a feature, not a flaw, you can adapt. Real assets, productive enterprises, and education preserve value. You can't outprint skill or discipline. Inflation may corrode money, but it cannot touch wisdom. The choice is simple: keep running on the treadmill, or step off and learn how it works. Footnote. Awareness and strategic asset diversification provide defense against systemic inflationary decline.